Gaza. I'm the director of.
Spell your last name for us, please.
Efia is E-F-I-A. Gaza. N-W-A-N-G-A-Z-A. I'm the director of the Malcolm X Center for Self-Determination, the initiator and facilitator of the Justice for Spring Valley. Please, I'm sorry. Justice for the Spring Valley High School 2, Shakara and Naya Kenny. And as you all may know, this coalition launched on October 31st, although it was formed on the 28th. This is a continuation of the activities that we have generated and participated in order to call attention to the abuses of police in schools and the national problem that it is. We were fortunate to have had the case here in Columbia videotaped, and as a result of that, we have been able to document the complaints, the injuries, the trauma that has been experienced by students, parents, teachers, and sued on their behalf by various other attorneys and organizations. Today, we deliver on behalf of the 150,000 plus people across the United States the demand that the charges against Shakara and Naya be dismissed, and that Ben Fields be charged with criminal assault as having assaulted Shakara, as evidenced by the videotape. We will have a series of speakers, and once the speakers have completed their 2-minute presentations, then we will deliver the 150,000 signatures to Dan Johnson, calling on him to get ahead of the schoolhouse to jailhouse train in South Carolina. We're going to begin with Pastor Thomas Dixon, who is the chair of the People's Committee to Take Back Our Communities from Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes, good afternoon. We need to do the name check. First name Thomas, T-H-O-M-A-S. Last name Dixon, D-I-X-O-N. Title Pastor, and with the Coalition People United to Take Back Our Community. The events that happened at Spring Valley High School on October 27th, as recorded on video, on a video camera, showed a school resource officer literally assaulting a young woman in class, physically assaulting a young woman in class. This is something that is unacceptable. Had the video not been there, once again, as we saw in the video recording of Walter Scott's murder in Charleston, had the video not been there, this officer, Ben Fields, might have gone on continuing what is deemed to be a reign of terror within this high school. Yes, there are some students who say that Ben Fields is a great guy. But look at the video. The video proves that that is not really the case. What he did to that young lady, as Pastor Dixon, had that been my daughter, I might have had to relinquish my pastorship and step to my business as far as taking care of my business about my daughter. But that young lady was manhandled. She was physically abused and assaulted. And to this day, the only thing that's happened to Ben Fields is termination. That's totally unacceptable. If any one of us would have done a youngster like that, or even an adult like that, we would have been in jail that day. So we're calling for his immediate arrest. and the charges to be filed against him. But not only that, when has it been the call of American society to impress charges on a youth of that age simply for violating that direct order, which I'm not taking away from the fact that it was disobedient. But the end did not justify the means. The punishment did not fit the crime. And for this young lady and the young lady who only filmed the encounter to still have charges now about 75 days later, that's unacceptable. Those charges need to be dropped. Those charges need to be dropped immediately. And right now we're looking at people standing around with 150,000 signatures that are saying exactly what I'm saying. So until we see that happening, the people will continue to speak loudly, and the people will continue to come forward. You see these children behind us? They want to have faith in this judicial system. I have a hard enough time in the streets trying to get youngsters to understand that our judicial system is supposed to work for us than to have a slap in the face like this going on in Richland County without the right thing being done. And when is there a wrong time to do the right thing? There's never a wrong time to do it. We can blame it on waiting on the FBI or whomever, but now is the time for action, and the people demand that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jonathan Stith. Jonathan is the executive director of the Alliance for Educational Justice. He is one of the 3 partners for this action.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonathan Stith, S-T-I-T-H. I'm the national coordinator with the Alliance for Educational Justice, a national network of 29 youth organizing in intergenerational groups from across the country who've come together to end the school-to-prison pipeline. And we come here to South Carolina today to stand with Shakara and Nia Kinney, because the young people in our alliance understand that what they saw, what was recorded, happens every day in American schools. And for some young people, they call it's a state of hostilities. So far to say it feels like a war. And for them, they've called for an end to the war on young people. And so they've come to build a national movement for peace and justice that seeks to end the school-to-prison pipeline. And so I'm joined by young people from Baltimore on the Baltimore Algebra Project, young people from Durham, North Carolina with the Youth Organizing Institute, and young people from New Orleans with Vela Nula. And so at this time, I'm going to invite them to come up and to talk and share their story and why it was important for them to come all the way to Columbia, South Carolina to stand with Shakara and Nia.
My name is Myron Miller, M-Y-R-O-N-M-I-L-L-E-R. I'm an organizer at Vela New Orleans. The reason why we came here is to stand in support and to say that this is not just happening here in South Carolina, it's also happening in New Orleans, Louisiana as well. The only difference thing is that our students really don't record what's going on. And so how do we push and make sure that our students don't be hurt anymore and our students get a right to their education? We need to stop and end the school-to-prison pipeline because we're pushing our students out and our students is not getting a good education. And we want our students to be successful leaders and lead this state and lead states around the world. We need to make sure that we invest in our students and make sure that they don't be harmed. Thank you.
All right, and then we have from the Baltimore Algebra Project.
Hello, I'm Jordan Leonard with the Baltimore Algebra Project, a 100% youth-run, youth-led organization in Baltimore City. And we are here today to, one, stand in solidarity as well as sort of promote a national student Bill of Rights, which is to say that we believe that all students in America have inalienable rights, which include the right to a quality education, as well as the right to a safe and secure place to be educated. And that is something that these students do not have currently. When you see things like what you saw in that video occurring in our schools, that's not isolated, that's not unique, it is common, and it is very common in Baltimore City. And so we're here to say, one, that is completely and totally unacceptable and a violation of these students' basic human rights, as well as to say that this is not unique, this is not isolated, this is occurring across the nation. Thank you.
the Youth Organizing Institute.
Hi, my name's Ashley Williams, ASHLEY-WILLIAMS, and I'm an organizer out of Charlotte, standing in solidarity with the Youth Organizing Institute and Ignite NC. I'm here today because I care about Black girls, I care about Black boys in schools, and I care about all the children who are of color who are falling through the pipeline. I'm here because I know that over-policing and over-criminalization of behaviors that are neither criminal nor inappropriate happen in school all the time, and I know what children are facing. I'm here because we need to hold space and remember that there are Black girls falling through the pipeline. There have been systemic and structural changes for boys, but not enough for girls. So I'm here today for them specifically.
And so last but not least, part of our work is to set a national demands, and that while South Carolina considers legislation that ends the school to prison pipeline, we also call on the federal government to do its part. It needs to stop funding school police at $250 million a year and begin to pour those resources into programs that work, like restorative justice, that would have helped resolve the case or have been the appropriate response to the behavior in the class. And we also need to figure out how we address the suspensions. Every year, 3 million students are suspended, 3-to-1 ratio, most of them are Black youth, and so we have a real problem that the federal government can step in and attend to and address by beginning to defund the school to prison pipeline and put funding into positive supports like restorative justice and education. And so we'll turn it back over to Afia. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to invite Maya and her mother, Doris Ballard Kenny, to come up. No, just speak.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to just thank everyone for coming out and supporting Naya and Shakara in this matter. What brought us here? Everybody knows that on October 26th, Naya witnessed what she would appear to her as an injustice to another child in the classroom, and Naya was compelled to speak out. No one told her to. This was just her basic instinct to speak out against what she thought was a wrong against another human being. So, and for that, she was arrested, and it was labeled disturbing school. So we stand today to demand that the solicitor or relinquish the charges against my daughter. And again, I just thank everyone for your support for Naya from my heart. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Millicent Brown. If you know the history, if you look back at the history of public education in South Carolina, Millicent Brown would have been the Brown in the Board of Brown versus the Board of Education had it been initiated in South Carolina, although it actually did, but because of the alphabetical ordering, Brown versus the Board of Topeka wound up being first. Millicent will come forward and talk about the impact of living in going to school in a hostile environment, as well as a project documenting the trauma that comes of that.
I'm Dr. Millicent Brown, M-I-L-L-I-C-E-N-T, Brown, B-R-O-W-N, from Charleston. I am a lifelong human rights activist, a native of South Carolina. I have been a college professor and also taught at every level in our educational system. As was just referenced, 10 African-American students and I in 1963 were the first Black students to desegregate schools in the state of South Carolina. We did so for the purpose of removing the barriers, the educational, the financial, the social, psychologically traumatic barriers that segregated schooling was imposing on Black students. 52 years later, I'm standing here in support of these young women because the hostility in 2015 surpasses even that we encountered back in 1963. I am challenging the state of South Carolina to ask how 52 years later, after we so-called made our schools welcoming to all children, we have this deplorable situation confronting us. I am a researcher who is documenting the trauma that is incurred when students, particularly of color, are forced into educational systems, classrooms that they are not welcomed in. And obviously, the situation at Spring Valley is just a reflection of what it is like to be in a hostile situation that is supposed to be a safe haven for learning. We are criticized because our youth are not in school. We are criticized because they are not doing well. We are criticized because we are not picking ourselves up by our own bootstraps and taking advantage of all of America's opportunities. And then conversely, we understand why so many of our youth say, this is not the place for me. We are demanding that not only these charges be dropped, but accountability for the horrendous action on the part of Ben Fields. And we need every educator, parent, sociologist, psychologist, community member to stand tall with us. Thank you.
Next, we bring to you Ms. Marjorie Britton Hammock, the Vice President of the South Carolina Progressive Network and representative of the Columbia chapter of the Black Social Workers Association. I would add she is also the former director of social work for the South Carolina Department of Corrections and of Benedict College.
I did work at the Department of Corrections. I want to make that clear. Marjorie Hammock, M-A-R-J-O-R-I-E, B as in boy, H-A-M-M-O-C-K, Hammock. And I'm representing the South Carolina chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, a group that's nationwide and international, and that was founded in the midst of struggle and continues to be a part of struggle. This 46-year-old organization has in fact concentrated on uplifting our African American people in the midst of struggle. We advocate for social change and justice and human development. Our particular interest, and you've heard all of the other issues that are going on that we as social workers are involved in, but our particular interest in terms of a school setting has to do with monies that are going into policing our children are being taken away from educating our children. We don't have the community of resources setting in our schools that we should have. We should have mental health services. We should have issues that help people like our young women who need people to support them so that they can take advantage of the educational systems. Our role and function is to make sure that every level of our government and our communities make sure that those monies go to those important kinds of things, those educational things, instead of bringing in law enforcement.
I think all has been said that needs to be said. Should you have any questions, we can take 2 or 3 questions before we go into the solicitor's office.
Ms. Guazik, you're aware that the solicitor has already put out a statement indicating that, number one, the FBI has not completed its investigation, that these investigations are inextricably entwined, and that until the federal government gets done with its investigation, there will be no decision on the part of the solicitor. Secondly, he has indicated publicly that he does not make his decisions based on petitions, public sentiment, and so forth, that he will decide this on the basis of the law. What's your reaction to that?
That we've heard that mantra almost every week for the past year since August 9th, when Mike Brown was murdered in Ferguson, Missouri. We've had an opportunity to observe the Department of Justice and its investigation. As a former SNCC organizer, have had an opportunity to observe the FBI and its investigations as far back as the 1960s. So we're not impressed by any of that.
Okay.
That's right.
We think that this is an opportunity for Mr. Johnson to address the needs of the people who elected him, to conduct his own independent investigation.
That's right.
And to bring charges against Ben Fields for, at a minimum, assault of a high and aggravated nature.
That's right.
And dismiss the charges against Shakara and Naya.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Open the door.